Peruvian President Pedro Castillo asked the country's Congress to work in a coordinated way to find solutions to the transporters' demands. The Russian government proposed to involve international human rights bodies in the investigation of the provocation in the city of Bucha in Ukraine. Former Burkina Faso President Blaise Compaoré was sentenced to life in prison over Thomas Sankara's murder on Wednesday. Hi, this is From the South. I am your news anchor, Diego Martin, from the teleSUR studios in Havana. We begin with the news. In Peru, President Pedro Castillo asked Congress to work in a coordinated way to find solutions to the transporters' demands. This idea came during a meeting with the board of directors to reach a consensus to the problems that the country is going through. The president pointed out that the ministers and the working commissions of the legislature should participate in the talks to advance cooperation and seek a solution to the strike. Castillo also declared before Parliament that the decision of total immobility in Lima and Callao does not go against the people but seeks to protect the health and life of its citizens. For his part, the head of the Ministry of Justice and Human Rights, Felix Chero, reported that the Congress and the executive have reached agreements that could satisfy the demands of the population in the face of the recent protests in the country. In Guatemala, civil, indigenous, and farmers' organizations advanced in their second day of protests and mobilizations against government corruption and the high cost of living. On Wednesday, a rally is expected to take place in the Human Rights Square in front of the Supreme Court of Justice in the country's capital to demand answers from this body to the questions about transparency. Protesters are also demanding an end to systematic state violence, while at the same time asking the nominating commission in charge of the election of the Attorney General to exclude Consuelo Porras, the current head of the Public Prosecutor's Office, from the process because they consider her to be close to the national executive. The demonstrators also warned on Tuesday about the deterioration of democracy and the scarce constitutional guarantees in the Central American country. Prices continue to rise in Colombia, and inflation in the first quarter of the year is already similar to the price increase registered during 2021. The Bank of the Republic in Colombia reports that in March inflation was at 1%, so the country accumulates an increase of 4.36% in the consumer price index during the first quarter of the year. According to a statement issued by the bank, the variation over the past 12 months was of 8.53%, an exponential growth of 7.02 percentage points compared to the same period the previous year. The bank said that food and non-alcoholic beverages had an inflation of 25.37% over the last 12 months, and the products that had the most increase in prices were potatoes at 110%, jam at 85%, and bananas at 82%. Systematic violence in Colombia also continues to rise. On Tuesday, a new massacre was registered, this time in the municipality of Quibdó, capital of the department of Chocó. 3 people were killed, including a 3-year-old girl, in a shooting incident in the San Vicente neighborhood of the city of Quibdó. 3 other women, including a minor, resulted injured in the shooting. According to local media, armed men arrived shooting at a group of people who were chatting in the neighborhood. With these new deaths, Quibdó reports to date 68 murders during the year, while human rights organizations report 32 massacres in the Colombian territory so far in 2022. And in Venezuela, the 16th National History Congress on its 3rd international edition is underway in the historic center of La Guaira State. Event organizers say around 700 papers have already been submitted, and there are more than 1,000 registered participants. The organizers say that the public can go to the historical center of La Guaira on Bolivar Street to enjoy lectures, debates, and cultural and recreational activities, which are also part of the event. Likewise, the organizing committee said this edition will focus on the civil-military rebellion of February 4, 1992, and the 20 years passed since the popular rebellion of April 13, 2002, for those are 2 of the most important events in Venezuelan contemporary political history. In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro received the representatives of various sectors of the country for a new phase of dialogue in which he assured the inclusion of all the political actors of the nation. The Venezuelan head of state first met with representatives of the non-governmental organization Foro Cívico, made up of scholars, business people, among others. Later, at the Miraflores Palace, he received representatives of the political coalition Alianza Democrática. The president thanked both sectors for coming to the meeting, given that this is a demonstration of the will for national reconciliation, as well as recognition of the legitimacy of the constitutional order. This Tuesday, the Legislative Assembly of El Salvador approved a series of reforms to the criminal code to punish with up to 15 years in prison the circulation of gang messages in the media. The reform was quickly approved by the legislative branch with a ruling party majority at the request of President Nayib Bukele. According to the text of the law, it will apply to those who reproduce and transmit messages originating or presumably originating from these criminal groups that could generate anxiety and panic among the general population as the law pertains. The penalties for the crime range from 10 to 15 years in prison. The legal reform comes after El Salvador recorded 87 homicides in the weekend of March 25th to 27th, and as a result of that, a state of emergency was decreed and more than 6,000 gang members were arrested. The United Nations Human Rights Office on Tuesday expressed concern over measures taken in El Salvador to respond to rising gang violence, precisely including the declaration of a state of emergency and increased sentences for juveniles. Office spokesperson Liz Throssell told a press conference that the challenge posed to El Salvador by gang violence and the state's duty to ensure security and justice is understandable, but she added that that must be done in accordance with international human rights law. The office source said that since the declaration of the state of emergency on March 27th, police and military forces have resorted to unnecessary and excessive use of force during operations in gang-controlled areas. Among the 5,747 detainees in these operations, it has been reported that some have suffered cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment. We're going to take a short break now. Please join us again after this. Hi, and welcome back to From the South. The Russian government proposed to involve international human rights bodies in the investigation of the provocation in the city of Bucha. Russian Deffence Ministry spokesman Mikhail Mizintsev denounced the mass death of civilians in Bucha as further proof of Ukraine's genocide against its own people and that a thorough investigation of the events must be carried out. In addition to this, he denounced that Moscow has evidence to prove that Kiev is planning to carry out a new crime like the one in Bucha. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that the killings of civilians in Bucha were a provocation aimed at putting an end to negotiations between Kiev and Moscow and refuted the responsibility of Russian troops for the events. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova was warned about the intentionally distorted promotion of events in Bucha. Speaking to Sputnik news agency radio, Zakharova said that internet platforms have joined in spinning stories related to the city of Bucha and the criminal provocation that took place there. In her opinion, the civilian killings staged there exceeds all limits because it was done intentionally according to a plan, not in the fervor of emotion. Zakharova said the images show real dead people, but she wonders about how they ended up on those streets and who killed them. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov accused Ukraine of boycotting the dialogues held between Ukraine and Russia.
We are concerned that the Ukrainian side has decided to demand that in case of signing the agreement, which I'm talking about now, all combat actions must be stopped in several days and Russian armed forces must leave Ukraine. After this, there will be an alleged referendum ratification in the parliament. There is a strong possibility that when the ratification and referendum give a negative result, we'll need to start negotiation process anew. We don't want to play such cat and mouse.
Likewise, Lavrov called on the Ukrainian side to make efforts to de-escalate the conflict.
In order to have real progress, rather than its pretense, we insist that a clear signal must be sent to Kyiv, not to carry out sabotage, otherwise we risk of repeating the fate of the Minsk agreements. We will never accept it.
Early Wednesday morning, a vehicle crashed into the fence of the Russian embassy in Bucharest, the capital of Romania. The Romanian television channel Digi24 reported that after the collision, the car burst into flames and the driver could not be rescued. The Romanian authorities have now ruled out the possibility that the accident may have been deliberate. The driver of the vehicle was Bogdan Dragici, who had spoken out against a Russian military operation in Ukraine and on Tuesday was sentenced to 15 years and 4 months in prison for abusing his daughter. The Russian ambassador to Romania, Valery Kuzmin, said that the incident could be qualified as a terrorist act and assured that the Russian embassy in Bucharest had received direct threats on several occasions. The European Union prepares to apply a fifth round of sanctions against Russia, accusing Moscow of alleged war crimes in Bucha. During the session of the European Council held in Strasbourg, President of the European Council, Charles Michel, said that the sanctions target coal imports and that they will also consider applying sanctions on all products from Russia.
The new package includes a ban on coal import. And, ladies and gentlemen, I think that measures on oil and even gas will also be needed sooner or later.
Soaring energy and food prices driven by the conflict between Russia and Ukraine pushed inflation in Europe to levels not seen in 4 decades, with prices in the 19 countries that use the euro soaring 7.5%, according to data released by the Old Continent Statistics Agency. According to data released by the Federal Statistical Office at the end of March, gas and electricity prices in Europe rose by more than 200 and 100% respectively. As a result of this increase, the German Council of Economic Experts, which advises the government in Berlin, this week slashed its forecast for growth in 2022 by more than half to 1.8%. Adding to the economic strain on Europe are surging food costs as supplies of wheat, corn and barley remain trapped in Russia and Ukraine, which produce a major portion of those crops for world consumption. Aribert Peters, CEO of the Association of Energy Consumers, said that the energy crisis has worse consequences than expected.
We forecast heat, gas, and electricity prices to double this year, which means a huge additional expense for our customers. Unfortunately, many people don't realize how stressful this is.
India's opposition parties rallied to protest inflation and sustained price hikes in the country. During the protests, former cabinet minister Balbir Singh Sirut announced a hike in petrol and diesel prices over the past 10 days, noting that inflation was rising by the day. Fuel prices have been rising steadily for more than 2 weeks since March 22nd, as the price of a 19-kilogram commercial cylinder recently increased from 250 rupees, about $3, to 2,253 rupees, equivalent to $30 US. In turn, the sharp rise in diesel and petrol prices has led to an increase in the prices of vegetables and other food items, pushing the inflation rate above 6% year on year. And in Greece, a general strike over soaring prices took place on Wednesday, which shut down public services and knocked out ferries and trains. Countries across Europe are facing rising inflation as energy prices have jumped since Russia's operation in Ukraine. Greeks have been hit by rising electricity and heating bills as well as housing costs. The country's biggest civil service and private sector unions joined Wednesday's action with separate demonstrations by unions and leftist groups expected in Athens and main cities later Wednesday. Airport services were unaffected by the walkout. Facing a drop in popularity ahead of 2023's elections, Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis last month announced a €1.1 billion benefits package to help poor households weather rising prices.
The wages are meager in comparison to the rising prices at the current time. The people are exhausted. There is a serious problem here, and this crisis is bringing Greek society to its knees.
People must understand this can't go on any longer. Everything has become more expensive. Pensions and salaries are in free fall. People must wake up. What's happening involves all of us.
China stated the recent announcement by Australia, the United States, and the United Kingdom to cooperate in the development of hypersonic weapons intensifies the arms race, which is why the nations of Asia must be extremely vigilant. China's Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian said on Wednesday that under the guise of the crisis in Ukraine or maintaining security in the Asia-Pacific region, these countries have come together to cooperate in the development of hypersonic weapons. Lijian highlighted this will only increase the risk of nuclear proliferation and intensify the arms race. Meanwhile, Foreign Minister Wang Yi criticized the creation of the pact and said it goes against the spirit of peace for the countries of that region. We have more news coming up after a final short break. Please stay with us. Hi and welcome back. Former Burkina Faso President Blaise Compaoré was sentenced to life in prison over Thomas Sankara's murder on Wednesday. The verdict came 6 months after the trial of the 14 accused in the assassination of the country's revered Pan-African leader began. The landmark trial opened in October 2021, 34 years after Sankara was killed in a coup that brought Blaise Compaoré to power. In addition to Compaoré, there are two sentenced to life in prison as well. Hyacinth Kafando is suspected of having led the commando that murdered Thomas Sankara and the commander of Compaoré's guard at the time of the events, as well as General Gilbert Diendere, one of the army leaders in the 1987 putsch. The three men were convicted of attack on state security. Compaoré and Diendere were also found guilty of complicity in murder and Kafando of murder itself. Israeli police cracked down on Palestinians at Bab al-Amoud, also known as Damascus Gate, in the occupied city of East Jerusalem amid the Ramadan festivities and in the eve of Passover. For the fourth night in a row, Israeli police on Tuesday night cracked down on Palestinians gathering at Bab al-Amoud in the occupied city of East Jerusalem. Heavily armed police officers used rubber-coated steel bullets, stun grenades, and batons to disperse Palestinians gathering at one of the main gates of the old city of Jerusalem. 12 Palestinians were arrested in the course of the clashes, and according to the Red Crescent, the crackdown left one Palestinian citizen injured. For many Palestinians in Jerusalem and throughout the occupied Palestinian territory, Ramadan is directly connected to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, located in a part of the internationally recognized Palestinian territories that have been occupied by the Israeli army since 1967. A hand grenade was thrown into Kabul's largest mosque as worshippers knelt in afternoon prayer on Wednesday, injuring at least 6 people. The reason for the attack on the Pule-Kishti Mosque in the middle of Kabul's old city was unclear. According to a police spokesman, one suspect is in Taliban custody. No one has claimed responsibility, but it was the second grenade attack in less than over a week. Over the weekend, a grenade was thrown into the middle of a market occupied by money changers, killing 1 person and wounding 59 others. Taliban officials blamed the attack on thieves trying to rob the lucrative market.
This afternoon, a hand grenade was thrown by someone during prayers. In this incident, unfortunately, 6 people were wounded. One of them is in critical conditions. Others were slightly wounded. One suspect has been arrested. The investigation.
Children in some drought-stricken areas of Ethiopia have dropped out of school as they have to leave their hometowns and take refuge in other places with their parents. Statistics showed that over 400 schools in the worst affected regions of Somalia and Oromia have been completely closed, and another 700 schools partially closed. Ethiopia is grappling with a severe drought as nearly 7 million people in the drought-hit regions need urgent help after a third failed rainy season devastates farmer communities. The drought conditions in the country's lowland area, which includes the Somali and Oromia regions, have led to a 20% increase in cases of severe acute malnutrition in children, according to the UNICEF. Gianfranco Rotigliano, representative of the international organization in Ethiopia, said they are setting up a system called BETI, B-E-T-I, where children can get basic education, psychological assistance, and protection assistance.
More than 500,000 children have dropped off of school. So we are trying to set up a system that is called BETE, that is education and protection, where children can go, they can get basic education there, and they can get also psychological assistance and protection assistance.
China has seen widespread infections of COVID-19 pandemic in the past month, which have been interwoven with sporadic outbreaks and spillovers and secondary transmissible cases, said Lei Jinglong, Deputy Head of Disease Control and Prevention Division of the National Health Commission.
From March the 1st to April the 5th, China had reported 176,455 local infections involving 29 provinces. Generally speaking, the infections are spreading fast and wide, with cluster infections interwoven with sporadic outbreaks as well as spillover and secondary transmissible infections. Since mid-March, revised measures have been implemented across China, and the hard-hit provinces and cities, including Guangdong, Shandong, and Hebei, all show positive trends.
Meanwhile, the Deputy Head of Disease Control and Prevention Division of National Health Commission also stated the COVID-19 situation in Shanghai City and Jilin Province remains complicated.
However, the COVID-19 situation in Shanghai City and Jilin Province remains grim and complicated. Shanghai is peaking with infections with 90,000 cases accumulated in the fresh wave of pandemic resurgence. There are many community infections which are spilling over to other provinces and cities. The situation is very worrisome. Jilin Province had reported over 60,000 cases, with incessantly rising figures. Changshu City still faces a severe situation. The main area of Jilin City is declining with fluctuations.
We've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at teleSUR English. You can also join us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I am Dio Martin. Thanks for watching.